What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Return of the Athlete podcast. My name is Paul Klingen, and I'm your host. I got a nice, cold, athletic brewing beer here. What I think is a Cerveza Atletica Light Copper. And this podcast is not brought to you by Athletic Brewing, but it will be someday because this stuff is great, and I'm a big fan. It allows me to just kind of relax and chill at the end of the day, but at the same time, I'm not slowing down my momentum. I can go train in 3 hours and feel totally fine. And this podcast is episode 2 of season 2, the new direction for Return of the Athlete. And this is going to be all stuff that I wish I knew 6 years ago. A podcast that I wish I would have heard as an athlete coming out of Division One sports, feeling lost, not knowing what to do, wondering why I was stuck, wondering why I was in a rut. And this podcast is for me, and it's also for you if you find yourself either in that stage or in a stage where you were crushing it, you were in alignment with who you were, and the last 1, 2, 3 years has kind of got you fallen off. So this is definitely still applicable for you. It's going to go very deep. It's going to be stuff that I'll be sharing that I have not shared before, and future episodes will be much more the same. Like, this is going to be real. This is going to be raw, truthful, and I'm super excited because if you've ever seen 8 Mile, where Eminem basically roasts himself, that's what this is going to be like, to where it's like we can go as men, as athletes, and say what it is that our deepest fears, insecurities, weaknesses are, and be like, sweet, you don't have anything on me because I just roasted myself. And that's kind of what he did in that rap battle. Anyway, so I was watching a video from 4 years ago, August 1st, 2018. I filmed this vertical video of me leaving Amazon for the first day and saying, my goal is to help people live healthier lives, yada, yada. This is what my mission is. I'm nervous, I'm scared, but I'm going to do it anyway. And it's interesting because 4 years has now passed. I've done that a lot, and it's been super rewarding. But recently, I've been finding myself really feeling called to this specific life stage that guys and athletes find themselves in. So that's what this podcast is basically going to be about, is my journey and my hero's journey as it relates to the return of the athlete and kind of a couple cycles of it. So I'll just go right from the beginning. Roughly, I grew up, like a lot of you, playing in the cul-de-sac, football, baseball, basketball, kick the can, hockey, golf. We would get these little tiny golf wiffle balls and just hit rippers off of my friend's mom's kitchen window. She would get so mad, but we're like, hey, we had to play it where it lies. Like, we had to bounce it off, trying to get a hole in one or whatever whatever it is that we're playing. We'd play tennis ball, baseball, where a home run was the roof. And man, there's no better feeling than just mashing one off of Uncle Johnson or neighbor Johnson's center field upper deck window, and you just round the bases. And that's what we did. That's what we did with a couple of my best friends, Corey, Craig, Bill. We would just play every single day till sundown. That really perpetuated me being able to go and have like a good all-around athletic background. I was a 3-sport athlete in high school, Mount Lake Terrace, baseball, basketball, football. Basketball, I was just kind of like a grunt worker. I would just go chase down rebounds and play defense and occasionally make a 3-pointer. In football, I did not like tackling. I did not want anything to do with confrontation. And so I would just get smoked in practice. And I was like, yeah, I just want to play offense. So I was just a wide receiver and occasionally a safety when they're like, yeah, we have no one else to go in. But then baseball was my big thing. So I was a catcher. And it's funny because when I was in elementary school, middle school, I was in outfield. And then my ADHD, I think, really started to just take off, go to a whole new level. It didn't matter if it was a butterfly, squirrel, bird, airplane, it would catch my attention. And then the ball would be hit and be like, oh shit, I need to go get that. And so it was kind of a blessing in disguise to go be a catcher because now my brain's solving all of these additional problems and it kept me more focused. And it's actually kind of been a theme throughout my life, being able to say, oh, I just need more stimulating challenges if I'm going to be engaged and be inspired. And so anyway, sports came pretty naturally to me. It wasn't like I was working incredibly hard to just be athletic, but I did work pretty hard at the skill of catching and was fortunate enough to become a Division I athlete, played baseball at Washington State. And it was that things coming naturally piece that was ultimately my biggest downfall, because I started to believe this lie that I could just show up. And my freshman year, I bought this t-shirt from, I think it was Locker Room, or what is it? Foot Locker. And it said, it was by Nike, which I'm like, Nike, how could you make this? It said, lazy but talented. And I wore that like a badge of honor because I was lazy, didn't want to work, but I was talented. And that only got me so far, because when you get to the Division I level, Pac-12 baseball, at the time it was Pac-10, but Pac-12 baseball, being lazy ain't going to cut it. Everyone's athletic, everyone's bigger, everyone's stronger, everyone is more gifted. And that really kind of clashed with my identity. And freshman year, sophomore year, I was just scared. I was so scared of what other players said to me. I remember we were at a football game one time and I got introduced by like a senior player to like some girls, and he was like, "This is Paul. He's an amazing catcher, but he sucks at hitting." And I was like, "Oh man, I'm just going to remember that for the rest of my life and feel like an absolute piece of hot garbage." And obviously I still remember it, but I mean, it was true. Like I just wasn't working at that skill. And at the Division I level, like that's a hard thing to not focus on and get any better at. So I struggled a lot with performance anxiety, where I would be, you know, in the batting cage. I would at practice, it would be during BP, it would be like, man, I'm so nervous to not perform and not be able to hit the ball the other way, because that's what the coach is asking us to do for this specific drill. And I think it was beyond just being nervous as a freshman. Maybe it was just being nervous as a freshman. I'd be interested in anyone here listening to this, whatever sport you played, just being nervous that freshman year. But it wasn't until the season started happening and started getting some playing time and just naturally, one, because I had to work a little bit harder, but I would just be put in situations where we're playing Arizona and it's like, dude, you have to hit, like you're playing this game because the other catcher's injured. So I'd go in and play. Started to build a little bit more confidence. But the thing that really got me was my sophomore year. Freshman came in, guy was talented and took my spot. And I was like, man, I thought this was my opportunity to really like stand out, get some more playing time. And then kind of last minute after spring ball, he just kind of came in, was like, boom, like took the spot. And that was something that I think looking back, I wish I would have obviously handled way differently. But I just started to allow this limiting belief of like, well, if someone younger than me is better than me, then I don't have any hope of getting any better. And after my sophomore year, I went into the locker room. I was supposed to go play summer ball in Calgary. And I was like, I don't want to go play summer ball in Calgary. I played in Springfield, Illinois after my freshman year. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to do that. And I ultimately quit. Told the coaches, hey, juice isn't worth the squeeze. We got this younger guy. He's starting ahead of me. I don't think I'm ever going to get any better. I've kind of hit my head on the ceiling, and I just don't think that it makes sense for me to keep playing. So I'm going to quit. And man, that still gets me to this day. Every month I have dreams that I'm playing college baseball, that I can't find my glove, or I'm on deck. And recently I had a dream where I was playing in a game and one of the coaches looked at me and he said, "Hey, Paul, that's great that you're fit. That's great that you've got your fitness in order, but when are you going to lead? When are you going to start teaching other people?" And I've kind of had that feeling for a while of, when are you going to start having these conversations that you wish you would have had when you were, a college athlete, or when you were out of college sports and found yourself in this halftime hangover, this halftime rut of like, who am I? What's my identity? Why am I stuck? Why do I feel like I can't break out beyond what I know I have the potential of doing? And so that kind of led to this halftime hangover. And that's what I call it, because it's this time and period where you're an athlete and then you quit. And when you quit, I remember I had a few different thoughts that like stick with me. One, I gave up soda like right at that moment. I was like, no matter what, I'm not going to get fat and let myself go. And not drinking soda was my way of doing that. Obviously, still drink beer and ate pizza and all that stuff, but the soda was the thing that I cut out. And I just ran. I ran like 8 miles a day, was going to do everything in my power to stay fit, stay in shape. But I remember leaving and being like, man, like I don't have a group of guys anymore. I still was living with players. We'd still party together, but it just wasn't the same. When you leave that locker room, hang up the hat, hang up the cleats, whatever it is that you're doing, you lose that community, that group of guys who are on a mission and they're operating at a certain level with a high standard. And no matter what you do, even if I was running 8 miles and cutting out soda, it's not the same as waking up at 5 a.m., blood, sweat, tears, all these things that you would do and spend time doing with your brothers. And so that was something that I feel like was kind of the first piece that I missed. And then you obviously lose the We had a strength trainer. His name was Corey. She was awesome. And I missed that. We'd still have the PDFs that she would send us for summer ball. And so I'd kind of go off of those for my workouts for the next 3, 4, 5 years. And my mid 20s, I really started to kind of cake in this thought of like, oh, I'm not going to get any better. Like, what's the point? It's almost like apathy, but at the same time, you're like cut in half of thinking, oh, like this is it. This is all I'm ever going to do. And wait, this isn't the end. This can't be all there is. There's no way I can just look back and live off of who I used to be as a college athlete. I remember on my Bumble, it was like former D1 athlete, and it's like, sweet dude, what have you done for me lately? And like I want to go like smoke myself right in the nose, my 25-year-old self right in the nose, because it was around that 25-year-old stage where I broke up with my girlfriend. She was a swimmer. I played baseball. And that was like another piece of my identity. Totally different from sports, but I think the thing that overlaps with those is when you have someone that you're dating or you have a sport, it's very easy to kind of lean your metaphor. I call it like a tree, where the tree leans on another tree and isn't growing towards its own sun because it doesn't have its roots grounded in who it is at like a deep core level. And so it wraps those branches, wraps that tree, leans that tree around other things, a baseball tree, a girlfriend tree, to find significance in who you are. That was my experience. And so when that happens, now you're single, you don't have a sport. It's like, what makes me special? So you go, again, this is my experience, but you go and just swipe as many people as you can. Tinder, Bumble, going on dates, trying to find that validation, find that self-worth. And I equate it to this polar bear that's on an iceberg, and it's jumping from iceberg to iceberg, but each iceberg keeps melting because it's in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. And so it's this never-ending voracious hole that you just have to keep going, keep going, keep going to find the next thing of like, hey, there you go. You're worth it. This is your identity. This is you. This is you. I remember being at my job, great job, Wine & Kennedy, one of the best ad agencies in the world. And initially I started out super hot, waking up at like 5 a.m., coming in at 6, just working because I was like, I got to earn my keep. I got to, show that I'm serious. And I was trying to learn from the mistakes that I had as a college athlete, because I wouldn't go in early. I wouldn't do the extra work. So I was trying to do that. And I think that's another thing that athletes do is they only know one way, 100% like party, 100% work. And ultimately it becomes something that's not sustainable. It's something that you can't do for a long period of time. And so 2, 3 years into my job, I get called in after a couple of promotions and they're like, dude, what's going on? You're not performing at the level you're performing. So much of the day, I would just kind of like stare at the computer and be like, I'm uninterested, looking out the window. Like, is this really all there is? And they just point blank were like, dude, if something doesn't change, like you're going to have to leave. Like you can't be part of this team. And I think there's 2 things that were going on there. One, I just needed to work and get my shit together. But the other part of it too, and this is where I think a lot of people find themselves in, is they're just not aligned to a mission and their true calling and who they're on this earth to be, whether you call it God, divine intervention, your calling, whatever language you use. I think we all have the ability to create something special and something unique and a gift to this world. And this isn't to knock jobs at all. Like you 100% should have a job. 9-to-5 jobs are great. I'll talk about that a couple thoughts there in a second, but you got to have something that is laddering up to a bigger mission. And that job could be the mission that enables you to do X, Y, and Z down the road. And if you're aligned with that, great. That's awesome. I'm all for that. But ultimately, I left a couple months later, was able to get a job at Amazon, and still thinking like, oh, I can just coast. And I explicitly remember thinking to myself, all right, last few months I've gone to Europe, done this like 1 or 2 week summer vacation in Europe. At the time I was 26, my salary was $70,000. And I thought, I got a little bit of stock, $70,000 ain't that bad. I can just do this for the rest of my life. That's it. Like be single, Europe trip once a year, 70,000. And like, that was it. I was like mentally capping myself at that as a possibility for myself at 26 years old, doing exactly what I did in college sports, saying, I'm never going to get any better. So what's the point of trying? And it was Andy frickin' Frisella. Andy Frisella. God bless that man, because he wrote a post that basically called the fuck out of me. And I needed it because it said in this post where it was basically saying, you know, you can be I think it was a squirrel was the animal he used, but he's like, you can be a squirrel thinking that you're just going to quit playing the game. You're like, I'm done running from the fox. I'm done running from the bear. This game isn't fun anymore. I'm tired of hunting for acorns. I don't want to play anymore. And that's exactly what I was saying. I was like, all right, well, I'm just not going to try. This is like my detachment uh, coping mechanism was like, all right, I'm just not going to care. I'm not going to try. You can't hurt me if I don't care. You can't hurt me if I don't try. And that's what I was doing. But what he said in the post was that it doesn't matter that you're done trying. Life's still coming at you. The bear is still going to come and eat you. The fox is still going to come and eat you. Just because you think that you're done playing the game doesn't mean that the game is done happening. And it was in that moment where I was like, damn, the only way through this is to go through it. The obstacle is the way here. I can't just say, hey, I'm done playing the game. I don't want to play anymore. I have to play the game. And I'm only going to be happy if I'm playing the game at 100% of my potential and my capability and living on my edge. That doesn't mean that I'm a MLB all-star. That doesn't mean that I'm the world's fastest marathoner, but I'll be damned if I'm not doing my absolute best at whatever it is that I'm putting myself towards. And so that was kind of like a unlocking moment for me mentally. And from there, I was able to then get really into yoga, get really into meditation, hired a life coach, for lack of a better term. And that was the moment where everything changed because I was looking in the mirror at myself on a Saturday after a night of drinking, kind of sloppy from a body standpoint, more fat than I wanted on my frame, looking at myself a little bit of hungover. And I just realized you didn't quit because the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. You didn't quit college baseball because some guy, took your chance and you were this victim. You quit because you quit, dude. And that's on you. And it was like in that moment where I kind of had this, again, another kind of moment of realization where it's like, I'm fucking up and I fucked up in the past and I don't want to do that again. And that's where I started going on this kind of transformation of myself. And that's why I'm so big on self-study and why I'm so big on meditation. I'm so big on breath work. I'm so big on journaling. I'm so big on coaching, on therapy and embodiment. And I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But that changed my life because until you arrive at the conclusion yourself, someone could have said to me, hey, dude, you quit because you just quit. I would have denied it. I would have said, no, that's not true. My ego would have pushed that away because there's no way that that could be the case. But when you arrive at the answer yourself, now you have to own that because you said it, because you came to that conclusion yourself. And that's, again, why self-study, reading and keeping an open mind, being able to absorb different ways of thinking, different perspectives is the most important thing that you can do. As an athlete, you got to train, you got to fuel your body, you got to recover, and you got to study. Not just books, those are great, not just other people to improve your intelligence and your knowledge, but you got to self-study yourself. The best quarterbacks, the best pitchers, the best hitters, the best basketball players, they're worried about what their game is. They're studying themselves intently because the more you know yourself, the more confident you're going to be because that confidence and that self-confidence are the roots of the tree that get you knowing exactly who you are at your core. You're an athlete, you're a champion, you're a warrior, you're whatever it is that you say you are in your I am statements. And at the end of the day, if you take those actions, that's what your identity is. That's what's true. So that was really my call to adventure. When you look at the hero's journey, whether it's Luke getting called to go fight the Empire, Frodo getting called to go destroy the ring, Harry getting called to Hogwarts, every single movie that is like an epic movie follows this hero's journey, and you can see that symbolism. I'm excited to talk about that symbolism in future podcasts because if you can understand what you're going through in your life and then tie that to, oh, that's just where I am in this journey, now you can know what to expect. And now you know, oh, this isn't the wrong direction. This is actually the right direction. I should be running into this obstacle because I'm at this stage in my journey. So ultimately, 8 months after getting into yoga, hiring that life coach, quit my job at Amazon. That would have been August 2018, and just went full into helping people live healthier lives. Taught yoga, personal trained, nutrition coach, taught at Barry's, taught at Core Power. I became a Lululemon ambassador and really just started pushing myself to my physical limits as well. was able to get a 70-second handstand, ran a sub 3 hour marathon by myself, got in incredible shape, and just really started to push and see what I was capable of physically. But in this time too was also when I met my fiance, Haley. And she wouldn't have, I always joke, you would not, she was like, you would not have been into me at 26. You would not have been into me in college. The thing that attracted her to me was that I was on this mission that ultimately had me standing out from the billions of other guys that she could have had. And that's what's attractive, fellas, is when you have this mission, when you are passionate about something, when you are just on the go and you will not be denied, someone wants to get involved in that. And it doesn't matter if you're a musician, entrepreneur, athlete, when they see that passion, they're attracted to the connection because that's you opening up your heart, your core, your soul. And when they can see that on full display, bam, that's when they get locked in. So I basically told her, I was like, hey, this is my mission. This is what I'm working on. I'd love it if you join on the ride. Let's go. And so fortunately she did. We're getting married in probably 6 months now. It's August 9th. We're getting married March 25th. Super excited. And this is where kind of like stage 2 of the hero's journey comes in, because we get engaged in November and I started going into this new phase of limiting beliefs and self-doubt and really negative self-talk. A little bit more context. I started taking Adderall last year, about a little over a year ago, for my ADHD, which I would take and I would have these huge highs and then big lows. And then in getting engaged, it forced me to change my identity. It's like, wow, it's not just me. It's I am Paul, the to-be husband. And when I mixed that depression that was coming from the lows of the ADHD with the thoughts of the same things that I had in college, where it's like, dude, you're not good enough. What's the point of even trying? It became thoughts of, you're not good enough to move on to the next chapter. What's the point of even living? You're going to let everyone else down as a father, as a husband, as a business owner. What's the point? And I don't think I would have got to that point had I not been having these really high highs and really low lows from just like the life stage change that was happening. And really, I needed to be able to embody who I was in that metamorphosis from a caterpillar to that butterfly. And I just didn't have the tools. And so I'm saying all this because it's me kind of realizing again that you can't just sweep the floor one time. You can't just grow one time. You can't just do one program, one coach, one aha moment. It needs to be a series of aha moments. It needs to be a series of these cyclical heroes journeys, because if it's not, and you're not consistently choosing who you are, breaking through the top of that pyramid, getting to the next pyramid, then at that point you're decaying, you're rescinding, you're no longer growing. And if you're not growing, you're dying. And so out of all of that, I'd say over especially the last like 6 months, it's been this really powerful transformation of choosing who I am, channeling that focus and that energy into something that scares me, which is ultimately return of the athlete, and this idea of serving men in that life stage, in their halftime hangover, and helping them get through what I went through and giving them the tools from a training standpoint, fueling standpoint, recovery standpoint, and self-study standpoint to be able to be the champion that they are and get unstuck. So if you're in that halftime hangover, it's in this hero's journey where you find yourself in this ordinary world and it's really comfortable. Comfort is great for a season, and there's definitely times when you should recover. And as an athlete, that would be the off season when you recover after the season, but it can also lead to complacency if you don't have a plan and if you don't have the next mission, the next season, whatever it is that you're focusing on. So that's when your body starts slipping. That's when you start letting those limiting beliefs slip in. When you think, oh, I'm good, I don't need to keep working because I can just kind of show up and everything will happen for me. And I'm here to tell you, as someone who has been so frustrated waiting for that to happen, it will not happen for you. You will run into that demon. You will lose to that boss from a video game standpoint over and over and over until you acquire the skills, until you acquire the tools necessary to beat it. And so at this point, it becomes this fracture of who you are capable of becoming, but who are you currently becoming and who you are at your core. So let me say that a different way. It's who you are trending towards and that decaying version of you, that shadow version of yourself, and who you're capable of. You're capable of so much more because you've seen yourself do it. But then you see yourself, what you're putting out, and you're like, that's not good enough. but you can't have this conflict. There's got to be one or the other. And so you know that you're better than being comfortable. You're better than thinking, okay, like I'm good. This is it. Let me just like be that squirrel that retires and doesn't worry about anything. So I'm going to wrap this up. If that's you, this is what the podcast is for. And I encourage you to just subscribe, share it with friends, share it with other athletes, other people that you're running into, similar issues with, and just talk to them. Like, you definitely would support that if you've listened to any of the podcasts I've done with Mindful Muscle around mental health. Talk to someone. If you got some stuff going on, that's going to be the most important thing that you can do, and really just poking holes in your potato. The reason why you poke holes in a potato before you put it in the oven is so that it doesn't explode. So poke holes in your potato. I've also got a 5-day mini camp and a free Facebook group for Return to the Athlete that you guys can check out. That's kind of a way for you to get some of the tools, get some of the locker room, the community, so that you can really start to figure out, cool, like what's my next mission? And with that, the link's going to be in the description. You can check that out from a podcast standpoint. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can check that on YouTube. You can also just go to returntotheathlete.com, and that'll pull you up to the mini camp as well. But with that, man, I'm going to sign out, squad. And the next episode, I'm going to break down the hero's journey so that you guys can get a better understanding of what it is that I'm talking about when I say the hero's journey. And I'm going to pull in scenes from different movies like 8 Mile with Eminem, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, The Dark Knight, Gladiator, The Lion King, right? Some of these most epic movies we've ever seen, because in it, you're going to see or hear and understand the symbolism from those scenes, from those movies, that you can then say, oh, wow, like that's me. That's what I'm going through. And that's where I'm at on my journey. With that said, thanks for listening. It's been Paul Klingen on Return of the Athlete. Catch you guys later.